The night was electric. Over 4,600 fans filled the grand arena, their cheers echoing through every wall as the king of rock and roll himself, Elvis Presley, took the stage. Dressed in his iconic white jumpsuit studded with gold, he smiled and waved, guitar glinting under the bright spotlights. The band struck the opening chords of "Can't Help Falling in Love," and the crowd erupted into applause. But just as the first verse began, something unexpected happened. A faint sound, soft, trembling, cut through the music. A child's cry. At first, it was barely noticeable, lost beneath the melody and the noise of the crowd. Then Elvis stopped singing. The musicians froze. The entire arena, thousands of people strong, fell into a stunned silence. Elvis stepped away from the microphone, scanning the audience with concern. "Hold on a second, y'all," he said, his voice calm but caring. His piercing blue eyes found her, a little girl in the front row, clutching a worn teddy bear, tears streaming down her cheeks. The spotlight shifted toward her, and the world seemed to shrink until only the two of them existed. Elvis slowly descended from the stage, security guards parting the way. He knelt beside her, the crowd holding its breath. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said softly, handing her a silk handkerchief. "Why the tears, little angel?" The girl couldn't speak, only hugged her bear tighter. Elvis brushed her hair gently from her face, whispering something no one else could hear. Cameras flashed, people gasped, and then, in one tender moment, he wrapped her in a gentle hug. The king of rock had paused a concert for one crying child, and in doing so, touched every heart in the room. The crowd watched in hushed awe as Elvis stayed kneeling beside the little girl, his guitar now resting quietly on the stage floor. The lights softened, leaving a warm glow around them. Her sobs had calmed, but her small shoulders still trembled. Elvis smiled kindly and asked again, "What's wrong, honey?" Her mother, sitting beside her, leaned forward with tears in her eyes. "She misses her daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible through the microphone. Elvis looked up at her gently. "Where is he, ma'am?" The woman swallowed hard, then replied, "He's a soldier, overseas." This song, "Can't Help Falling in Love," it's the one he used to sing to her before he left. The audience gasped softly. The air grew heavy with emotion. Elvis nodded slowly, his face filled with understanding and quiet sorrow. He turned back to the little girl, who was now staring up at him with watery eyes. "Your daddy sounds like a brave man," he said softly. "And I bet he loves you more than all these stars in this room." The little girl sniffled and nodded. Elvis reached out, taking her tiny hand in his, and smiled. "Then how about we sing this one for him tonight?" The crowd erupted in gentle applause, moved by his compassion. Elvis stood up, lifted his guitar once more, and signaled his band to start again. But before the first note played, he turned to the audience and said, "Tonight, we're not just performing. We're sending love to a hero far from home." This time the energy was different, quieter, more sacred. Elvis strummed the first few chords of "Can't Help Falling in Love," and glanced toward the little girl. She was still holding her teddy bear close, eyes fixed on him. He smiled gently, giving her a small wink before singing. "Wise men say," his voice rang out, smooth and deep, filling the arena. But as he reached the chorus, he began to change the words, almost whispering them. "For love like yours, child, your daddy fights so brave, and every night he prays for you to be safe." The crowd gasped softly. Elvis was improvising. His bandmates followed his lead. Instinctively, the piano player nodding in time, tears glimmering in his own eyes. The little girl stopped crying. Her lips began to tremble into a smile as Elvis knelt once again, singing the last verse directly to her. When he finished, he gently took off his silk scarf, the famous white one around his neck, and draped it over the girl's shoulders. "Now you hold on to that," he said tenderly, "and every time you miss your daddy, you remember, love don't ever go away." The arena was silent for a heartbeat, and then it exploded with applause and cheers. Thousands of people stood, some wiping their eyes, others hugging strangers beside them. Elvis raised his hand to quiet the crowd and said, "This one's for all the little ones missing someone tonight." The lights dimmed to a deep blue as fans raised lighters and phones, swaying to the melody. For a few magical minutes, the concert became something more, a message of hope, love, and the power of one kind heart. Decades later, the legendary moment lived on, a grainy black and white clip of Elvis stopping his concert for a crying child. For years, it circulated quietly among fans, whispered about as one of the King's most heartfelt performances. But when the video resurfaced online, remastered and shared on social media, it captured the hearts of an entirely new generation. Within days, it had millions of views, millions of tears, and millions of comments saying, "This is what true music feels like." One night on America's Got Talent, a young contestant named Eli Presley, only 14 years old, stepped onto the stage dressed in a simple Elvis-inspired outfit. The lights dimmed, and the screen behind him began playing that same historical clip, Elvis kneeling before the little girl, the crowd frozen in awe. Then the boy said softly, "This moment changed my life. I want to honor it tonight." The band began to play, and Eli started singing, "Can't Help Falling in Love." His voice was pure, trembling slightly but filled with emotion. As he reached the part where Elvis had changed the lyrics, Eli did the same, his voice cracking as he dedicated the song to every child who misses someone tonight. By the end of the performance, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Even Simon Cowell, known for his tough critiques, leaned forward, visibly moved. "That," he said softly, "isn't just a performance, that's a legacy reborn." The crowd rose in a thunderous standing ovation, many holding up their phones with Elvis's image shining on the screens. The moment that had once broken 4,600 hearts now touched millions more, and the King's compassion lived on through a new voice. The stage lights dimmed, leaving only a single spotlight shining on a lone figure stepping into the center. She wasn't a contestant anyone recognized, a middle-aged woman with gentle eyes and a trembling smile, holding an old, faded teddy bear in her hands. The audience watched in silence as she looked around the America's Got Talent stage, then said softly into the microphone, "My name is Lily, and when I was 6 years old, Elvis Presley stopped his concert for me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even the judges leaned forward in disbelief. She held up the worn teddy bear, its fur thin from years of love. "This little bear was with me that night. I cried because I missed my daddy, who was serving overseas. And Elvis, he sang for him. He sang for me." The crowd grew still. Lily took a deep breath as the first notes of "Can't Help Falling in Love" began to play. Her voice was soft but full of emotion, not powerful like Elvis's, but honest, trembling, and full of history. As she sang, images of that old concert flashed on the big screen behind her, the King kneeling beside the crying child, the scarf, the embrace. Tears rolled down Simon Cowell's face. He whispered, "That's her. That's really her." When Lily reached the final line, "Take my hand, take my whole life too," her voice cracked, and the audience rose to their feet, clapping, crying, cheering. The music faded, and for a moment, all was still. Then, with trembling fingers, Simon pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti rained down as Lily looked up, clutching her teddy bear, and for the second time in her life, a song had brought the world to tears.